It should be okay.
Patty
Sorry.
has, thank you, Patty, for your patience.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's quite an
Thank you,
operation.
Patty, for joining. Yeah, well, it's too many devices and too much, and not enough coordination. Thank you for joining us, Patty. You're an incumbent city council. This is your first. You're just finishing your first term after several terms on the school committee. Your priority, by way of from your website, your priorities are climate crisis, good governance, affordable housing, and streets designed for all users. I want to mix things up a little bit by asking you to talk a little bit about to say about how you neighborhood associations should be involved in making decisions about neighborhoods and the correct way to do that.
That's a really key question. I think that actually is on one of my priorities also. It was one of the reasons I ran in 2019, was to say we needed to do a better job of developing community and of using our existing neighborhood associations. As those of you who follow politics know, by the way, is there a time limit? Should I don't know how I realize.
Well, we have a total of 8 minutes. We have a total of 8 minutes.
Okay, so I'll adjust this by saying one of the things I did as chair of it's called the NLTP, the Neighborhood Long-Term Planning Public Arts and Facilities Committee, was to actually bring a meeting together to say, how can we work better with neighborhood groups? Because I don't think we're using neighborhood groups well. And I also think that it's a real tension that we want to support you, but we also don't want to control you. And I think that's really hard to get the message out. And that's what I tried to do. So to answer your question, John, about I think we can do a better job of working with groups. I hope that I've helped with that conversation. The city is organizing its community development department in a different way. I had a lot of meetings kind of behind the scenes with them about trying to say we need to do this better and to support you all in recruiting and getting help in whatever you need, whether it's meeting space, whether it's now that we're on Zoom, should we get you all Zoom memberships? But you should have direct say and direct input into any issues that affect your neighborhood. There are some that are citywide, but then there's some that are very much based in the community. And it can't just be communication where there's presentation. I get as frustrated as any of you when we're at a meeting and everything's just thrown at us instead of really say, here's a draft. It truly is a draft. It's not a final plan. We actually want your feedback so that we can improve it. It doesn't happen enough. I hope it's starting to happen. And I think that's one way that we can continue the process of improving how it is that we include neighborhood associations into our decision-making process on a huge range of things. We often include neighborhood associations. We say, we send you information about curb cuts. We say, hey, there's a big development. Should we do community benefits? But we're actually not involving you in the way that the decision, the development, and the planning happens at the neighborhood level. And it means that we have done a lot of things that are not in sync with neighborhoods and not in sync with probably best policy and best practice for the city.
Yeah, I would point out that you mentioned the neighborhood associations get notices of curb cuts, but we didn't get a notice about the bike lanes being put through 3 major arteries in mid-Cambridge. It should have been allowed. City council should not have voted for. I mean, should the city council have voted for it without hearing from the neighborhood association?
Yep, you're right.
Yeah. Now, circling back to some of the other issues of Mid-Cambridge. Of course, Mid-Cambridge is in the middle of things. There is a housing crisis, there's a transportation crisis, and Mid-Cambridge can't house everybody, so we're between the housing and the jobs. And so the solutions to our transportation crisis, what are your views on the bicycle safety or cycling safety ordinance and the way that it's been implemented? Is it time to open this up to a more transparent process now that people know what's going on?
So definitely, I still stand by it came in very late, so I wasn't involved in the original organization because I just started on council a year and a half ago. But I do still stand by the idea that we need a network of protected bike lanes across the city. If we don't have a network that goes all the way across in a few different places, people will not feel safe. I know that, but I also drive a car, and I also know that we can't only do something that it's not that I personally don't think we should just transform every single street into it. So I think what we can do better, I think the implementation has been terrible. I cannot believe, and I said this at City Council this week, that we didn't learn the Brattle Street implementation surprised people, the Cambridge Street implementation surprised people. And what we do when we say, well, what's the outreach? We list, here's the outreach we did. And my response is, I don't actually care how much outreach you did, but if people are surprised by it, you didn't do enough and you didn't do it effectively. We don't tend to measure how it is that what we're doing is having the impact. So I think what we need to do with the implementation of this bike lane is take a step. We don't have to pause the long-term implementation or jeopardize that timeline. If we say right now, what we're going to do is stop and make sure we have included everybody in it. But more importantly, there are ideas for how we can implement this that include Cambridge Bike Safety and Small Business Association and residences. They did a really good job of coming up with a completely alternative plan for the Porter Square area. That's exactly the type of planning and thoughtful collaboration that the city should be sponsoring and fostering, instead of just coming out with plans that don't satisfy anybody. And then frankly, they threw this council a little bit under the bus by saying, well, it's the council's making us do it. No, we're making you do the protected bike lanes. We are not making you take away all the parking. And in fact, we don't think you have to be taking away all the parking. And I think there's been a couple problems. One, there hasn't been enough thoughtful examination of ways to do those bike lanes like Boston has done, which has not created the same problems in Cambridge. And secondly, to communicate very clearly what is being done and why we think that this is not going to cause the problems that some other people think it's going to cause. Is that enough of an answer, or do you want?
That's a very helpful answer. Thank you, Patty. I'm afraid we're almost out of time.
Oh, no!
Do you have any quick thoughts on what we can do to bring back local businesses?
Oh,
that's a tough one.
First of all, a couple of quick things. I don't think our funds got out enough to local businesses. There are a lot of people who applied and didn't get any of those funds. So we trumpet that we have those funds and they haven't been out enough. I also think we need to specifically, we have a lot of staff and we need to support organizations that are citywide, like Cambridge Local First and others. We also need to let our residents know how it is that they can better access small businesses. And provide, again, I want us, this is across everything we do, whether it's education or climate change or neighborhoods. How effective are our programs? We have a lot of programs and I have no idea how effective they are. And I want to see a really solid research on ask the businesses what it is that they need, because I've been to a couple of things where we're providing for small businesses and I am shocked and dismayed by how few people are taking advantage of it. And that says to me, I'm glad the city's trying, but we're not trying in a way, again, it comes back to monitoring and effective and accountability. And I don't want to know how many places you've held. I want to know how many businesses you've helped. I don't want to know how many jobs you hope to create. I want to know how many jobs you actually created. Okay, I think we're out of town already, which I can't believe it.
Yes, you're out of time. It's been very interesting, and thank you for taking the time, and have a good evening. So now we move on to I'm going to introduce our next candidate,